Dear Venerable Sir and dear ladies and gentlemen, friends in the Dhamma, this evening I would like to talk a little bit about the Buddhist meditation according to the Buddha. And when we talk about meditation, we should understand that there are different types of meditation. Even within Buddhism, you find Theravada meditation and Mahayana meditation sometimes differ from each other slightly or more or less. And when we're talking about meditation, we should sort of maybe define first what we're talking about. And I would like to just mention, just a few types of meditation to give it a little bit of a context. There is, for instance, Zen meditation, then you have the Tibetan meditations, techniques with mantras and with visualizations and things like that. And you have in the Mahayana tradition, the Chinese Mahayana tradition, for instance, the meditations on the Pure Land, or the repetition of the name of Amitabha Buddha, for instance, as a kind of purification of your mind. But if we go to the Theravada section, or the Theravada school that I happen to belong to, not that I say I am a strict Theravada Buddhist, I hope I am following the Buddha's path, so you could say a Buddhayana Buddhist. And in that Theravada tradition, even there you find a number of meditation techniques. And when you look at the literature, especially the handbook on meditation, which was written by Buddhaghosa in the 5th century AD or CE, Common Era, you find that there are a number of meditations which come under the category called Tranquility meditation. All kinds of techniques which lead to tranquility of the mind, to calm your mind down by using some kind of a technique. For instance, if you have metta bhavana, which most of you are familiar with, the development of loving kindness for all beings, including yourself, when you develop that, like wishing yourself, may I be free from anger and fear, may I be free from greed, hatred and delusion, may I be free from conflict and suffering, may I be well, peaceful and happy. And then you start wishing that to other beings, human beings, and also animals and non-human, non-animal, invisible beings, etc., all beings, near and far. You find that your mind becomes sort of malleable and soft and calm and quiet. So that is one technique which comes under the category of Samatha Bhavana or Tranquility meditation. But there are a number of other techniques where, for instance, you take an object that you are looking at, what they call Kasina meditations. Those are objects, for instance, a plate or a bowl full of sand or earth, and you look at it and you realize this is earth, 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 and you keep on focusing on that, plate of earth, and you get absorbed in that object, and you focus your mind, you exclude other objects, and you start concentrating just on that chosen object, and after some time you may find that you actually get absorbed in that particular object. Now that is also a type of tranquility meditation, concentration by exclusively focusing your mind on a chosen object. And there are other kind of objects like earth, water, fire, and even air. And a blue plate or a yellow plate can also be used. They're traditional kind of objects which come under that kasina bhavana meditation, an external object which you focus on. So let's say now Maitri or Metta bhavana is a kind of quality that you develop in your mind, and kasina would be concentration on a chosen external object. And then of course you have what we call anapanasati bhavana, the development of mindfulness on in-breathing and out-breathing, being aware of your breath. And there must be mentioned that there are different schools in that. You know, the meditation which became popular in Burma, and before that it was confined to monasteries, especially aranyas or forest monasteries, and people used to think that laymen, laywomen cannot meditate, that is only, reserved for monks living in the forest. But since the 1930s, with people like Ledi Sayadaw and later on Webu Sayadaw, then Mahasi Sayadaw, these techniques became more and more popularized, and lay people also started meditating. And roughly speaking, to mention the difference between the techniques that some used and the others, especially on anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, some of them, the school of, let's say, Mahasi Sayadaw, they were focusing on what is called the rising and the falling of the abdomen as an object to be aware of. Feeling, the rising and falling of your abdomen. Not sort of staring at your navel, as some people misinterpreted, Buddhist meditation, but feeling the rising and falling movements of your abdomen as you are breathing in and breathing out naturally. That would be the object of your concentration on this anapanasati related object. But other schools, for instance, the teacher of S.N. Goenka, and nowadays I think all of you are familiar with the name Goenka, Goenka, and S.N. stands for Satyanarayana Goenka. So Satyanarayan Goenka was born in Burma, but from a Hindu Indian family, and got in touch with U Ba Khin, a public servant actually high up in the hierarchy in the Burmese government, who became a meditation teacher. He was teaching people in his office first how to meditate, and later on he himself became a monk for some time. And Goenka, as you may know, was a successful businessman, but he had one problem, that was he had a constant headache, migraine. He had gone for specialists in the United States, Switzerland, Japan, all over the world to look for a cure for his migraine. He couldn't get rid of it. Somebody said, why don't you follow a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat by U Ba Khin, which he did. And it was so good, his migraine disappeared within the 10 days, and he decided to stay on. And after 10 years, U Ba Khin said, now you're ready, you can go and teach, why don't you go to India and teach this to your family and friends there. And that's how Goenka started teaching Vipassana meditation. And there, the first 3 days of the 10-day retreats, which they always, require you to follow if you start with Vipassana meditation according to the Goenka system, you have to follow the whole of 10 days meditation retreat, starting with 3 full days of anapanasati. And there, they teach to feel the breath inside your nostrils, somewhere near the tip of your nose, inside the nostrils, or maybe on the upper part of your lips, the upper lip or so, just in a little area near the nose tip. And that is another kind of object than what I mentioned before of the Mahasi school. And usually I will teach the feeling of the breath near the nostrils or inside the nostrils. It seems that that is closer to the Buddha's original teachings. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the discourse on the development of mindfulness on breathing, and also the Satipatthana Sutta, the development of mindfulness discourse, Buddha said to establish your mindfulness in front of you. Now, where is that? Not somewhere over here, because we cannot feel anything there, not related to the breath. There must be some place where you can feel the breath, and that is most likely where it touches the skin of your nose when you're breathing through your nose. So unless you have a bad catarrh problem or a nose cold, very often you are breathing through your nose. And we have actually been breathing since we were born, and we will hopefully, of course, we will continue breathing till our last breath, but very, very seldom do we actually pay attention to our breathing. And it is said that Prince Siddhartha, when he was only 7 years old, and his father, King Suddhodana, was doing the plowing ceremony, like the king of Thailand is still doing the plowing ceremony every year. In those days also there was a plowing ceremony. Prince Siddhartha was there, but he didn't pay much attention to the plowing ceremony. He went and sat under a rose apple tree, a jambu tree, and got absorbed in his breathing, and he started to feel very, very happy as he was getting concentrated and absorbed on his breath. And that is more or less, I think, where the Anapanasati Bhavana, the meditation on breathing, came from. He developed it later on and expounded it, systematically. But the thing is, with Anapanasati Bhavana, meditation on breathing, we can use that as a meditation that leads to just tranquility, as a samatha bhavana technique, if you keep on focusing only on that particular object. If you manage to do that, that is, it's not very easy to keep your mind on a very subtle object, because the mind has the tendency to jump to this object, that object, get distracted, so to speak, by sounds, by feelings, by thoughts, or what we call just the monkey mind, not finishing one fruit and going to the next, and jumping from the past to the future and here and there. So to keep your mind on one chosen object, like a subtle object like the breath, is not so easy, especially for people who are living in the modern, urbanized world with a lot of things to do, a lot of impact from the environment, from the traffic, from the television, from the media, from the internet, from your friends, from your work, etc., for the plans that you have, the things that you have done, and the things that you still have to do, may all come to your mind while you're trying to focus on that very subtle object, of the breath. So Anapanasati, in those first 3 days of a Goenka retreat of 10 days, some people may manage to get, onto that object and really start feeling the breath and say, aha, is that what it means to be aware of your breathing? You haven't experienced it until you have. And some people may get that on the first day, some on the second day, some on the third day, and some people maybe later or never. It depends on your propensities, they say, with samatha bhavana or tranquility meditation. It depends on previous experience, maybe even extending to previous lives that you have already practiced this. You can't expect your mind to immediately settle down and focus on such a subtle object. But you can try. And then, fortunately, the Buddha also told that it's not that important, to stay with one object only, because there are also these other objects that are just as valid, that belong to your body and your mind, that you can become aware of. And that, of course, is, for instance, the body itself. To become aware of the fact that you are either sitting or standing or walking or lying down or eating or talking or keeping silent or doing the dishes or bungee jumping or something like that, depends on what you are doing, to be aware of what you are doing. And that is some kind of body awareness. Or, for instance, that you become aware of the fact that you feel hot or cold or sweaty or dry or heavy or light. Those are also kind of experiences that you may come across, and that is a body awareness. So these things are written down in Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the development of mindfulness, where the Buddha expounded, systematically what they call the Kayanusati, the mindfulness of kaya or body, then Vedananusati, the mindfulness of feelings, then Chittanusati, the mindfulness of your mind itself, and Dhammanusati, the mindfulness of the dharmas, as it is called. That is a lot of things, including, for instance, to be aware of the cause and effect, of the Four Noble Truths, of the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, to mention it quickly, and later on we can get into a little bit more detail. But these are what we call the four sections of the Satipatthana Sutta: the awareness of the body, 1, awareness of the feelings, 2, awareness of the mind, 3, and the awareness of the Dharma, sometimes here referred to as mental objects, Dhamma. But Dhamma has many meanings. It's not only just Buddhist teachings, but also in this case different kinds of characteristics and things that you can become aware of. So there's actually quite a lot that we can become aware of. And it doesn't always happen in real life experience according to the books. According to the sutta, the Buddha had to expound that sort of systematically, starting with being aware of your body, whether it is sitting or standing or walking or lying down, etc. And then the anapanasati becomes part of the body awareness, because that feeling of the breath is a physical kind of event which we can become aware of. The mind can become aware of the physical sensation of that breathing. So anapanasati comes actually under kayanusati, or awareness of your body. And then you can become aware of feelings. Now, feelings in English, if you divide it into physical feelings and mental feelings, then you could say physical sensations on the one hand, and mental feelings like emotions you can become aware of. So physical sensations would be pleasant sensations or unpleasant sensations or neutral sensations. So those can happen just in your body. You can become aware of touch sensations, for instance, or other kind of sensations like itching or pressure or whatever, heat and cold. So there you become aware of certain physical sensations, and they can be either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. But then you can also become aware of mental sensations, or mental feelings rather, like emotions. Sometimes you may be irritated, or you may be angry, or you may be lustful, or you may be greedy, or you may be restless, and things like that. Then it's sort of overlapping, being aware of your emotions as well as being aware of your mind. The mind, of course, is a very difficult thing to define, but when we look at the mind in body and mind distinction, when the Buddha says nama and rupa, rupa is usually defined as the body, the physical body, although some people disagree with that, but let's say generally speaking it is considered to be the physical body. And then mind would be Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana in Pali language, or feelings, then perceptions, intentions, and the contents of your consciousness. Those are things that we can become aware of during our meditation also. And when you become aware of feelings and of intentions and of thoughts, and even of sights and sounds and smells and tastes and things like that, then you become aware of mental objects in a way. So you are watching your body, your feelings, and your mind, basically. So the Buddha actually said that is very important, because that is what we have, and that is the nearest and usually the dearest. And rather than trying to find out, the qualities or the characteristics of what's happening on the moon or in the deep ocean or in another continent or in somebody else, we should start very near to go very far. And where can we start nearer than with our body and our feelings and our mind? So it's not meant to be a selfish kind of activity, but to be aware of oneself, of one's body, feelings and mind is where we actually have to start. And then another thing is that a lot of people, and according to some recent research that the BBC World Service has done, most people, they say, are not really living and aware in the present moment, but they are somewhere else with their mind most of the time. Either they are thinking about the past or they're thinking about the future, and very seldom are they really fully aware of the present moment. So that is probably what we call being scatterbrained, and according to another program on the BBC World Service, I do listen sometimes regularly to the BBC World Service, so I don't mind quoting them sometimes. Another thing is that with the internet, the younger generation especially are used to click around, clicking from one site to another and doing some downloading here and reading there, and again clicking on another object and another subject, and also copying and pasting and quite a lot of things one after the other. And according to that research, it makes your brain even more scatterbrained. And even the neurotransmitters, which are supposed to transmit the signals from one cell to the other, seem to be disturbed in the younger generation. And they say literally, people becoming more and more scatterbrained. So the title of that program was, "Is the Internet Making Us Stupid?" Yeah. Of course, you can get a lot of information, but that doesn't mean that you're becoming wise. And the Buddha also made a distinction between knowledge and wisdom, for instance. We can read all the Buddha's teachings if you have time, but that doesn't mean that you become wise automatically. Or you can know everything about a lot of subjects, like being a specialist in this field and that field. Well, specialists are usually people who know a lot about a little, no? The more you specialize, the more you know about less and less. But then the general practitioners, for instance, in medicine, they know more generally about a lot of things. And there are some people who, well, they dabble into many subjects, and they seem to know quite a lot about many subjects. Or you can get a degree in this and a degree in that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one becomes a wise person just by collecting a lot of knowledge and information. That may be able to pass you through your exams and do a job, but that doesn't mean that it helps you to overcome your dukkha or your suffering, that it leads to wisdom and liberation from samsara, for instance, you know. For that we need another kind of knowledge, another kind of real knowledge, which goes above the thoughts and above the concepts, and that we call wisdom. So the wisdom that we get is not so much through what we call tranquility meditation, because what tranquility meditation does is it focuses on one chosen object by excluding other objects, and then you may experience peace of mind. But as J. Krishnamurti used to say, if you know about J. Krishnamurti, he says, that's not real peace of mind, that is just a piece of the mind. You see the difference? So you may have the illusion that you have peace of mind, but when you get out of that, you may be back to square one. It's like those people who had psychic powers. By concentrating, they could levitate, they could fly, and then they may see something attractive on the ground and lost their concentration and came down with a bang. It's like, at the end of that concentration, meditation, you're back to square one, so to speak. But with the other category, which I mentioned, which leads to insight, and that is the development of mindfulness, or the satipatthana bhavana, that is where you start to see the things as they really are. Sati, or mindfulness, for your information, the definition is not a mind full of things, by the way. I hope you realize that. Mindfulness is not a mind full of things. Just as, quantum mechanics are not the mechanics working for Mr. Quantum's garage, for instance, But anyway, so mindfulness you can translate also as awareness or as attention to something, to be aware of. And mindfulness development is, according to the Buddha in his preamble to the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on development of mindfulness, is something that leads to purification of your mind, the overcoming of conflict and suffering, and eventually the reaching of the highest goal, namely that of nirvana. So that includes quite a lot. And that is why it is a different kind of category of meditation than all the other tranquility meditations. And that is why also we call it a typically Buddhist meditation, because it was the Buddha who discovered it, apparently, and then started teaching it. And he himself said that until then he had been taught basically tranquility meditation up to the highest levels available from the best yoga and meditation teachers of the days, Alara Kalama and Ramaputra. They were teaching how to concentrate on a chosen object and to get into deep concentration and absorption, getting into dhyanas or jhanas, from which the word chan came in Chinese and zen in Japanese and sun apparently in Korean, has all derived from dhyana or jhana, absorption of mind. Now, we can say that is a kind of meditation. Zen is not always just focusing on one chosen object, but that's a different matter. That we don't want to get into different schools of Zen meditation now, and I'm also not a real expert on that, so I'll try to stick to what is called the Theravada school of meditation. And here, what we do see is that the dhyanic meditation or the tranquility meditation may give us certain kind of psychic powers, as they are called. When you do practice it and you are successful in concentrating your mind deeper and deeper and deeper, if you come to what is called the fourth dhyana, you may experience what is called psychic powers, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, thought reading, and remembering past lives, and the possibility to appear in more than one place, 2 places or more, bilocation, what is called, or multi-location. And maybe some other kind of psychic powers, I don't know. Those are the 5 usually mentioned by the Buddha. And he actually mastered all those psychic powers, but he said, this is not the end of the meditation. This is not really the unconditioned. There must be something above this, beyond this, and this is just reconditioning your mind. Maybe it is worthwhile doing it, but it is not really solving the problem of samsaric suffering. It is just rearranging our mind and, through deep concentration, getting into states of maybe bliss and happiness, but that is also a temporary state, not a real, spiritual goal of liberation. It's a temporary suppression of your thoughts, and therefore maybe you get the feeling of happiness or peace within, and of course that's better than being unpeaceful or agitated or other things. But it doesn't, what we call, uproot the causes of suffering. If you look at the 4 Noble Truths, for instance, and especially the second Noble Truth, where it says that the main causes of your suffering or dukkha are basically craving and ignorance, then we can say, well, craving doesn't come by itself. As long as there's ignorance, there will be craving, what we call tanha, craving for sense objects, craving to become something in another world, maybe even to become a deva or a brahma, and also the craving for non-existence, like stop the world, I want to get off, sort of thing. But that doesn't sort of stop your craving when you get into these deeper levels of jhana. It only suppresses for some time, it suspends it maybe. But when you get out of that state, you're back to square one. And therefore, the Buddha said, to make real progress in uprooting these causes of suffering, we have to uproot avidya, or ignorance, or moha, what is called delusion. That is, when we don't see the things as they are, then we have to try to see the things as they really are. And that can be done, according to Buddhism and Buddha, by using sati, or mindfulness, awareness, or attention. That is the least conditioned part of your mind. All the other things like thoughts, emotions, feelings, and concepts, all that is conditioned according to your previous experience. But sati is something like neutral observation. It is not 100% unconditioned, because the only unconditioned thing is really nibbana, but sati can see the things as they really are. And what does that mean in this Buddhist context? Well, to see how everything conditioned is changing all the time, for instance. The changeability or the impermanence of conditioned things. What do we mean by conditioned things? Well, basically everything under the sun. Everything which is like human, animal, and other kind of beings, and things, material things, that have form and shape and color and smell and so on, and cause and effect, and are in time and space. They're all conditioned, and therefore that is not what we call the unconditioned. And so long as we stay in this conditioned realm, there will always be some kind of unsatisfactoriness. Even if you recondition your mind and you make it beautiful, with loving kindness and generosity and compassion and all those things, not that I say you shouldn't do that, but it is not the final solution to the problem of dukkha. If we really want that, then one would have to develop the mindfulness, for instance, of anicca, not maybe in front of your physical eyes, but you see it within yourself as a fact. And then it becomes a kind of mind-changing factor, where it uproots that delusion of permanence and maybe the delusion of real happiness that we project onto things which cannot give us real happiness, but we're always searching for happiness, and we usually look in the direction outwardly for happiness in the world, worldly objects like beautiful sounds. You like to go to a concert, you like to go to the movies and see beautiful things, even in nature sometimes, or whatever, or in museums. That gives us some kind of happiness, which the Buddha says that is worldly happiness or pleasure. There's nothing against it, but we have to be careful not to mix it up with unconditioned and real happiness, which is independent from the sense objects. So as long as we depend for our happiness on external objects and on external circumstances, or even on our thoughts and ideas, then it is not real happiness which is unsoiled and unspoiled and unconditioned. So that one is what the Buddha calls real happiness, when it is not dependent on the sense objects. And that perhaps is called the bliss of nirvana. It is a happiness which does not really depend on anything, but it is basically, and that is the beauty of it, to be found within oneself. Nirvana is not some kind of heaven where you go after death or something like that, which some people seem to think, especially when you see the banners at a cremation ceremony, may he or she attain nirvana, with 3 exclamation marks, like after they die, may they attain nirvana. Well, of course, it is better than saying may they go to hell or something like that, that you don't wish anybody. But it doesn't mean to say that you can only attain nirvana after death. The Buddha has shown by his own example that it is attainable within this lifetime. Well, it depends a little bit or quite a lot on your previous karma and under the present circumstances and under your effort that you make, what you put into it, but still it is not unattainable as a human being. That's what the Buddha meant to say. Try to work out your salvation with diligence. Appamadena sampadeta, the last words of the Buddha. So don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today, sort of thing. So some people say, oh, nirvana, that can wait, with this. Other people say, I want nirvana, but I want it now. But there's no such thing as instant nirvana. There are instant noodles, but maybe not instant nirvana. Although they say nirvana in itself doesn't take any time, but sometimes the preparations towards it take time. And the way that we look at things, so we have to sometimes undo certain kind of patterns, especially the unskillful patterns which lead to our own suffering. If we can watch those and undo those and basically overcome the causes of our suffering, which is overcome the craving, overcome the ignorance, and then perhaps we can find that that which we were looking for was not far away, but was basically hidden under the surface of our thoughts and emotions. Something which is potentially already within us. So that means actually we don't have to go anywhere to find what you're really looking for. Maybe you can go to a forest hermitage, you can come to the Buddhist Mahavihara, or you can go to the middle of the ocean, or you can go to the beach or to the forest or someplace like that. But wherever you go, you always take your body and your feelings and your mind with you. So sometimes people who are sitting in the middle of a very quiet place, in their mind is still going a lot of noise and, wondering and thinking about the past and the future and about themselves, maybe doubts and so on. So realizing that all these things basically can be found within oneself, and one has to overcome them by oneself. There's nobody else who can really do it for you. That's another thing. We have to sort of meditate ourselves, and Buddha said, you are responsible for your own karma, and you are the one who receives the results of your karma. Even though you may say there is no constant eternal self, still there is a stream of consciousness, there is a kind of line of identity between me now and me 50 years ago. And what I did in the earlier part of this life probably has led to consequences now. And if we do sort of accept the continuation of the stream of consciousness from one lifetime to another as what is called rebirth, then the karmic activities from the past life and lives, also will shed their results in the present lifetime. So, we cannot really change anything in the past because it's already done. And we don't really know what is coming in the future. But what we can observe and what we can know is from moment to moment in the present. So if we look after ourselves in the present, that is the best thing that you can do. Namely, then you can avoid to get into trouble, so to speak, by developing unskillful thoughts and feelings and actions and words, and try to develop the skillful ones, and maybe also not to react according to your past conditionings, but to respond based on mindfulness and clear comprehension, and maybe fed by good qualities such as patience and loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity, what is called. So, actually speaking, now you have been listening passively for nearly an hour, and I think it may be a good idea, as the Buddha said, Kalen Dhammasakacha etang mangalamuttamang, which means to have Dharma discussions from time to time is a real blessing, that we open up for little Dhamma discussion. If you have anything to say or to ask, please don't hesitate.